Well, I hope you're starting to get a feel for what the American Transcendentalist writers are all about.
Why do we have to study all these dead writers? I mean, there's a poet alive today who writes rings around him. Damien. I'm tired of living in the past. I'm living now.
All right. I want you to write an in-class essay, compare the use of metaphor and civil disobedience. I said I want you to write.
Ladies and gentlemen, fellow purveyors of the absurd, today I stand before you to shed light on a topic that has long been shrouded in darkness. A topic so sinister, so diabolical that it threatens to unravel the very fabric of our society. I am, of course, referring to the insidious influence of heavy metal music. A cacophony of noise that has led countless souls down the treacherous path to demon possession, murder, and sex-fueled dreams. Yes, you heard me correctly. Behind the pounding drums and screeching guitars lies a Pandora's box of depravity, waiting to ensnare the unsuspecting and lead them down a primrose path to perdition. But fear not, dear friends. For in the midst of this cacophony of chaos, there exists a savior, a beacon of hope in the darkness. And who, you may ask, is this unlikely hero? Why, it's none other than your high school English teacher. Yes, you heard me correctly. While parents and politicians wring their hands in despair, it is the humble English teacher who holds the key to salvation. Armed with nothing more than a tattered copy of Whitman and a penchant for pontification, they stand as the last line of defense against the forces of darkness that threaten to engulf our youth. But let us not delude ourselves, my friends. The dangers of heavy metal music are very real, and they lurk around every corner, waiting to pounce on the unsuspecting and drag them down into the abyss. Demon possession? Oh, it's real, my friends. Just ask poor old Aunt Mildred, who hasn't been the same since she attended that Iron Maiden concert back in '87. And murder? Don't even get me started. Just last week, young Timothy bludgeoned his neighbor to death with a copy of Slayer's Rain in Blood after a particularly raucous listening session. Coincidence? I think not. And let's not even talk about the sex-fueled dreams. Oh, the horror. Night after night, our youth are besieged by visions of debauchery and depravity, all courtesy of those infernal power chords and guttural screams. But fear not, dear friends, for in the face of darkness there is light, and that light, my friends, shines forth from the hallowed halls of our high schools, where the English teacher stands as a bastion of sanity in a world gone mad. So let us raise our voices in praise of the humble English teacher, our last hope in the battle against the forces of heavy metal and mayhem. So in today's episode, we'll be taking a trip down memory lane to explore the impact of the Satanic Panic of the late 80s on entertainment, and what better way to kick things off than discussing the cult classic film Black Roses. This headbanging horror gem was a prime example of how the era's fears and anxieties influenced the creative landscape. From its thunderous heavy metal soundtrack to its chilling portrayal of societal paranoia, Black Roses epitomizes the spirit of the Satanic Panic era. And today I'm joined by Jonathan, who you may remember from the Society episode of 13 Nights of Halloween.
Howdy.
And joined by a special guest tonight, Wyrd.
Hello. Glad to be here.
Thank you both for joining us. So, let's dive in and just start talking about this crazy movie after my soapbox intro there.
That was amazing. I fucking loved it.
That was pretty sweet.
Thank you.
Very well detailed.
I was channeling the spirit of the lady who stands before the city and condemns, I can't believe the band is coming here. So I actually believe that lady, fun fact, was the actress who swam with the creature from Black Lagoon in Creature from Black Lagoon.
Okay.
Yeah.
Might be.
Cool. So that would be cool. Thanks to Joe Bob Briggs for giving me that information.
Nice.
Yeah.
All right, so got a little bit of the story. I do too. That's actually, I think that's how I heard about this movie, and I had a great time with it. But before we get too much into my thoughts, let's just get into the story and plot of this movie that I kind of covered in that brief intro there. But I think I only know of one other movie that's like this. I haven't seen it yet, but it's definitely on my list. The Trick or Treat came out around the same time. I actually think it has a famous rock star in it. I think Ozzy Osbourne is in it somehow.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember.
Yeah, I know which movie you're talking about.
Another podcast. Okay.
I haven't seen it, but I've seen the title.
It comes up.
Yeah. Okay, so I definitely want to see that one after this one. But this movie, the story of this movie is unique to me. I have not seen another film that is this deeply rooted in that kind of the music will corrupt you story.
Yeah, it was something else. I mean, everyone, you get small town action, middle of nowhere. These kids are like, oh, this band, they've never played anywhere before. They're going to play here. Oh, my God, we're so honored. And the parents are just like, we don't know what the hell's going on. This is some craziness, and we're not sure we agree with this. And then everyone's just battle back and forth. And just, there's some surprising turns in the film that I wasn't quite expecting. And some straight craziness. And then you see some cool kind of like early cameos from some other people that you might recognize in there.
So you hadn't seen this one before, had you?
No, this was totally new for me.
Okay.
And it was just surprising because like I love trauma films, and the fact that this one, you don't really think of it as a trauma film. It doesn't really seem like it fits in line with those kind of films that they did, like Lloyd Kaufman, all these films. There are just really lots more effects than what you'd see in this film, a lot more insanity. But this had more of a baseline story, and it didn't really get too crazy with the plot. They tried to stay more linear with the story, and had more focus than you would see in other trauma films.
Yeah, I would definitely agree on that. In fact, when you message and you're like, "Oh, it's a trauma film," I was like, "Oh yeah, it is." I forget that it's a trauma film because typically I associate trauma films with way more nudity and way more gore. So,
yeah, like the Toxic Avenger, classic
exactly.
High. And, there's all these other like insane films, side characters that offshoot that from the Toxic Avenger and had their own little spinoffs. Man, it was something else, dude. New Jersey, it's New Jersey, man. Wow, something just crazy.
Yeah.
I've always loved trauma films. I've always loved trauma films. So when I saw that it was, and this was actually, when I saw your message, I had just watched this with Joe Bob Briggs. So I was like, oh my gosh, I just watched this movie. I need to go talk about it.
It was Valentine's Heartbreak, whatever special. Yeah. Well, that was good timing. I think I had just watched it as well. It wasn't this year's Valentine's special. I think it was last year's. But it was actually, I put it on to go to sleep to. Like, I just love this movie so much. I put it on to fall asleep to because it's like a comfort film. It's anyways. But yeah, I watched this story after watching when I started to get into the 80s movies again. And for the first time for certain genres, I'd never seen this one. And it stood out amongst a plethora of slashers and crazy, insane stories. And this one, like, a lot of what's said in this movie, or a lot of what this movie portrays through its story, are kind of things I grew up hearing in my home. Yeah, so I've mentioned in previous episodes, I grew up with a youth pastor as a father. And so that meant that, like, what I listened to and what was brought into the home was screened for content. And they did their research on what was allowed. And so I remember hearing, like, why are you listening to this evil music? And because it was metal music. And so I see that in this film. And this film is like, it is both parodying those fears and feeding them at the same time. Like, I'm not sure they were successful at dispelling the idea that these bands were evil, but it's done in such a fun way.
I don't think the point was to dispel the idea. I think they were encouraging it to get it worse.
They were making it worse.
They were making it worse.
Wasn't this like kind of like around like the whole Nancy Reagan era? Who was it that was like fighting the music, and then like Twisted Sister or Tipper Gore? Okay.
It was Tipper Gore.
Okay. Yeah, so they were trying to like put, that's when they first started with the advisory labels and stuff,
1985.
Twisted Sister got into the big fight about all of it,
Mm-hmm.
and with the censorship and how they were trying to portray, Dee Snider and the rest of other, popular bands who were heavy in metal at the time, or just heavy metal genre, just they were just demonized left and right, even though they tried to tell them that, the crowd style and like how they treat each other is different than what they think. So in this film, it's kind of like, oh, this is going to be such an evil thing, la, 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 la. But then, they get that mild pacification. And so the parents, let down their guard and, go away. And then some crazy stuff happens in this film. It's just like that fight to God, what I'm trying to say here. Like trying to open their boundaries to like new types of music and stuff that they think is going to be bad. Even though in this situation, it turned out to be like actual evil,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think they did make some really good points about the history of rock and when Elvis came out and when the Beatles came out, how it was like, oh my gosh, these people are going to ruin our youth. And oh my gosh, and now it's like, it's whatever. The funny thing about the trials in 1985 is that John Denver also was a witness and testified, and Tipper Gore thought that he was going to come down on their side of it. And he looked at her and basically called her a Nazi.
Yeah. I love that story.
Yeah.
The fight for freedom in music's been a long one.
And actually it wasn't, and it's funny that they came down more on metal music since it was a Prince song that started the whole ball rolling.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
It is. And then it wasn't even heavy metal that got the first label. It was Two Live Crew, and it was like in 1990 something.
Oh, wow.
For their first album. Yeah.
Being born in 89, I was towards the, it was already well cemented by the time I was aware of all of this.
Yep.
And I think that also is why my perspective of this movie is almost comedic, is because to me, this is old hat. Like, it's funny to look back and see that this was how people reacted. But I would have loved to have been 18 years old in 1988 when this comes out and seeing the reaction. I would have loved to.
I didn't even hear about it when it first came out. I was 10. But it was funny because you were talking about growing up in a religious household, and my mother was very religious, very church going, and my stepdad, Harvey, her and him together was like, wow. I was listening to stuff like Petra, which is still kind of heavy metal, but it's Christian metal.
Petra. Yep.
Church Petra metal. And White Cross. But
Striper.
Yeah, Michael W. Smith. And
yep, that's what I grew up with.
To my stepdad, that was still the devil's music, even though it had a Christian message. And I was like, but it's Christian music. You got to expand your boundaries to reach more people. He's like, nope, gospel is the only real music.
Oh, if only they could hear Christian metal, like bands like Demon Hunter, they would lose their friggin' minds.
See, that's what I was going to say. I was a peak emo kid in 2004 to 2008, and I was Demon Hunter, The Showdown. Yeah, I was into all of that, and I still got this music sounds evil. And I'm like, who determined what evil sounds like?
I still got to go to a White Cross concert though, so I can't complain.
All right.
Yep.
Because it was a youth group thing. So because I was going with the church, it was deemed acceptable.
Yes, of course.
But on the other hand, my dad was very much not religious. So my first actual concert was New Kids on the Block, and I was like 11. So
I'm trying to think. 90% of my concerts growing up were Christian concerts. I mean, I saw DC Talk. I saw.
I used to listen to DC Talk super hard.
I saw Newsboys.
I saw
church bookstore. You go in there and get your cassettes and everything.
Oh yeah,
absolutely.
Oh yeah, yep. And then I actually, man, I couldn't tell you who my first non-Christian concert was actually, because by the time it happened, didn't care who I was seeing. I just liked the band. So I was just, all right.
At 13, I won tickets to NXS. Woo!
Oh, nice. All right.
That was before they came down on you have to be 18 years old to enter. But I also, my siblings were, so mom was oblivious. I got to watch Total Recall.
The original, not the remake.
I'm the baby. So Mark is 6 years older than me. Jeanette's 3 years older than him. I'm the baby. Mark told mom it was okay. He'd watched it. It didn't have anything super offensive in it. And an hour later, I'm looking at a 3-boob chick getting molested.
It's like, what is this?
And I was like, yes, Mark, thank you.
So let's jump in. Yeah. We'll move on. We covered the story. The characters in this movie it's interesting in that I almost took away that the characters in this movie are this town itself. There's not really a main character outside of the teacher. There are a bunch of characters that we follow from beginning to end. And I think that's a good representation of how this town welcomes everyone or welcomes this band, because we see it from multiple perspectives. We see it from the parents' perspective. We see it from the mayor's perspective. We see it from the teacher's perspective. And then we have like 3 or 4 different students that we see. And while the students are all pretty excited, you have like your goody two-shoes character who is excited but hesitant. You have your kid who's been a goody two-shoes and is ready to break out and paint the town red in a very literal scene.
Yep.
And then I like how the paint just caught on fire for some reason.
No particular reason at all. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. I'm like, okay, all right.
It's symbolic, I guess. You have kind of your bully character who, like, this is the path you expect him to follow. And then you have your kind of trashy girl character. So you had your good girl, your bad girl, your good boy, your bad boy. And we follow all 4 of them throughout the film. But the main, I think the core that binds them all is the teacher. And then really what progresses the story is the band. So there's so many characters that I'd be hard pressed to call anyone other than the teacher and his teacher's pet, what was with the 80s and weird teacher student relationships? They're everywhere.
I don't know, man. Dirty dancing and like chicks and older, like young chicks and older dudes or something. I don't know.
Yeah,
just,
at least
I can tell you in my own experience, my music teacher in middle school was like the only friend I had. So,
well, I will say at least this teacher shuts down the advances of the student.
Yes,
even though
smart
it's
man.
Popular knowledge around the school that they're doing it, apparently.
Yeah,
it's rumors abound in high school.
Yes, and I would say his reaction at the end of that makes me think that those are just rumors and that's not actually happening.
Yeah,
but there's definitely some weird tension between the two of them. But yeah, the overall character arcs are interesting because I wouldn't say there's any real, like, at the climax of the film, there's not really like a profound moment of understanding and change from what they were leading into the climax. But throughout the movie, we see these characters kind of devolve. And I liked how each time there's a concert, everything ramps up. So depending, it's like a 4-day, 4-night show schedule, and each night things get a little bit worse for the characters at these concerts. And I like the way they progress that, but overall, I'm not sure I would pick out like a true standout character for me.
No, yeah, they kind of spread it around between like a small handful of them, between the teacher, 2 main kids, and then like the mayor and that whole situation with, you know, his daughter, and like the teacher and his daughter having had a relationship and being on the break right now.
Yeah. Who that was Lou Ferrigno's wife.
Yes, it was.
Yeah.
And we just put her in there to have her in there in that one scene.
Eye candy, man. Eye candy.
Yep.
Yeah, like I said, that's one cameo right there.
Yep.
The other one, the Italian kid who's kind of kicked the hard ass, his dad, Vincent Pastore, is Tony's dad.
Yes.
From The Sopranos. I saw him and I was like, no way! Vincent Pastore's in this. Like, that's crazy.
It was his first role.
I know. It was so crazy. I was like, I cannot believe this was his first film. That's insane, but so rad.
Delivering an incredible line that I'm not going to repeat on the podcast, but it's one to be heard about earrings. It's
I don't see any pirate ships outside.
Yes, I don't see any pirate ships in the driveway. It's so good. Yeah.
But it also really set a tone of just that comment by itself of how sexuality was viewed. I'm looking at my notes real quick because I typed up some notes, and it seemed to me that the characters all were kind of on the 2-dimensional though. Like you had the high school dynamics, and you know, high school kids can go from 0 to 120 in the drop of a hat. I know this, but it all just
we've been there.
You know, yes and no. I was a weird high school student, but you know, even for small town high school students, it seemed like there should have been, I don't know, something a little bit deeper that connected them all, not just this high school class.
Yeah. That English class was really a pivotal part of the storytelling.
It was.
Which, yeah.
Think about it, now looking back, like you don't really see much otherwise at the school as far as more students, with a couple of small pieces, like when they're outside in the parking lot, when the band's giving out stuff in the parking lot, you know, and the dude like goes rage and like beats the guy for the record and shit.
For no
just like
reason.
Waylays him. Yep. Dude, yeah, just totally unprovoked.
It was was that after the first concert?
Yes.
Yeah, that was after the first concert. Yeah. And that's when you see some more students. But the rest of the time, you only see those students from the class. Even the first shots in the town, you don't really hardly see anybody. Like, it's an empty town.
Yeah.
Well,
it's kind of weird in that way because you don't see a lot population-wise in the story. You know?
Except the concert footage.
Yeah.
The concert footage is tons of people that you never see again.
And the PTA meeting at the school. Like, so empty, so few people. It's like, wow, okay.
But at the same time, they emphasized it at the beginning that this is a small town. And that's part of the reason that the band being there was such a big deal. Is they're a no-name little town. And living in a small town now, I can tell you, even in the middle of the day or at rush hour, there's like nobody around.
Well, I get it. I grew up in a small town in southeast Arkansas, you know, like 7,500 people, Milltown. And even then, like now there's like 5,000 people. But even then, like you still see a little bit more going on. Like there's nothing going on in this town. At all.
I'm in southeast Arizona and they don't see anything. It's like nobody goes out.
I live in small town Indiana, and it's very much like this film. So
it depends on your town.
Yep. We go downtown on Sunday, and it's a ghost town because everything is closed on Sunday except the one bar that does a brunch buffet. So that's it. That is it.
Everything closes down here by like 8.
Yeah.
It's crazy. It's crazy to me.
Honestly, I love it. And I think that's one of the things this movie does well. I'll talk about that on the direction. Go ahead.
The other thing I wanted to say about the teacher was it seemed like he went back and forth from being a teacher to trying to be one of them to connect with them more. And it was like, you know, that teaching style never really works.
No. As somebody who taught for the last 2 years, well, for 2.5 years, They see that as a sign of weakness and kind of walk all over that. But like you said, he tried to connect. Doesn't he like swear in front of them and get a reaction out of them? And it's very mild. He says like back ass words. Yeah, he's like back ass words or something like that. And the kids all like, oh, chuckle.
Yeah.
It's very mild.
Instead of, and especially in a super religious small town where everybody should have been like, oh my God, my teacher swore.
Yeah. So ultimately, these characters and the character arc, I scored it a 3 just because it's not tremendous. I do think what they were doing is well done, but it's just not that kind of movie that's an intense character study.
Well, I think they maybe could have done it better. My overall story plot was the execution fell short. So whether it's you want to say it's the script or the way the people presented it, but the story itself, I don't think went into how they changed enough or gave enough of an before and after comparison. Okay. And I think part of that is they did the concert so close together that there was no buildup in between them.
No, that's a very good point. The movie is less than an hour and a half. It's a solid 82 minutes. But you bring up, there's not a lot of buildup between. Did I miss it? Who are the little boys who are suddenly burning action figures?
Oh, that's one of them's little brother.
Okay, was he at the show?
Yeah, this kid wasn't at the show, but he's so corrupted. He's burning the good guys alive now. His action figures.
And he's like 8 years old. I think he was the bully's little brother or something like that.
Okay. Yeah.
I think he was the bully's little brother.
I think that, like you mentioned, I think that scene comes almost immediately after a concert. Like they go to concert, cut to the next day, and this kid's lighting action figures on fire.
Everyone's like zombies in the classroom. But
yeah. And there's no real, like, well, we're going to get to the music at some point, but yes. I thought it was really funny that the band was like a glorified hair band.
Oh yeah.
I love it. I love it so much. I love it so much.
I mean, they wanted to be heavy metal and they were totally Bon Jovi.
Well, use that to slide into the music, because that is our next category. Because this music is, I honestly love it. I love it. It's not great, but it is a ton of fun.
There's a few songs that you can give some credit to for being pretty decent for composition, but like the lame ballads at the start to get the parents to let their guard down, just ugh.
Well, I've seen enough. I don't expect any trouble here tonight. But I better take my leave of these parents of paranoia. Ellen, are you satisfied?
Well, they are awfully loud, but the children do seem to be enjoying themselves. I don't suppose there's any real harm to them.
Well, you know, every generation had their own music. Remember the Lindy Hop?
Oh, Mayor, don't embarrass me.
I need a drink. You want to join me?
Yeah.
Listen, I don't know about you folks, but I have to get up early in the morning.
Just hokey, just basic.
You mentioned
vomit.
Paradise. I love that song. I liked Paradise. We're on our way to Paradise.
It was good.
See, but no, I think
it had a
some
very
80s glam metal song for sure.
They did it well. They did it well for that whole 80s vibe. Now, there was I can't remember the guy's name, but the drummer for the band, since we're talking the music, is actually the sibling of a famous drummer who drummed for, I want to say, Black Sabbath or Ozzy Osbourne and a couple of actual metal bands from the 70s and 80s.
The drummer was Carmine Appice or Appice?
Yeah,
I'm not sure.
Appice, I think.
Yep.
His brother, his younger brother, I think it's his younger brother, is, there he is. An actual, like, famous drummer.
Yeah. And he put together the band.
Yep.
So the actual band from
forces.
The actual band from the movie recorded, I think, 4 or 5 songs for the soundtrack, including that Paradise Power Ballad. It was one of them that's Rock Nation, I think.
There's Dance on Fire, Soldiers of the Night, the Massey Rock Invasion, and the Paradise
Rock Invasion was so cringe. It's hilarious. I really I enjoyed it. It's so bad. I loved it though. Like I would listen to these songs just if they were on a playlist. They are musically good enough. I probably wouldn't skip it.
Hey, but Lizzie Borden and King Cobra.
Yes. This also features great tracks from Lizzie Borden, King Cobra, and because we mentioned it, a Christian hair metal band is on the list as well. So it's just, that's a little surprising.
Metal Blade release for the soundtrack.
Yeah. So another thing on the Joe Bob episode that I wouldn't have known because it was before my time, but this soundtrack, especially on vinyl, I'm sure is a collector's item. I tried to find it on streaming. I can't find it on streaming.
No?
So
have you checked the Metal Blade Records website?
No, I haven't, but that's a good idea.
Let's check catalog.
I just checked Apple Music. Is it on Apple Music? I couldn't find it, but
probably not on Spotify either. I don't know.
So I would love to find the vinyl. I don't know how much that goes for on eBay.
Oh my gosh, that'll go for a lot. If it's a collector's item, it's going to be a lot.
Yeah. But the other thing that I love about this music is that the music lyrical content progresses as the movie goes. Like we pointed out, each concert, they get a little bit more corrupted, the kids. And each concert, the lyrics get a little darker and edgier. And then the final concert's not even music. He's just got that awful script that is being repeated. My flowers. My children of evil worship me. It's just on repeat.
Stroke my ego in me.
Yes.
Already. Jeez.
But the funniest part of that whole bit was as soon as he sees the teacher, he goes back to his regular voice. Like the demon voice disappears.
Yes. I noticed that. I also love, like you mentioned, that first transition when they come out singing the power ballad, and he's wearing like big old white trench coat and they're all dressed in white and like Miami Vice characters or something, and they're all like singing power ballads, and then he's making eye contact with that teacher from stage, and they're just eyeing each other down, and then that teacher pauses at the door and then turns to leave like, oh, it's fine. And instantly the lights go out and they strip off the white and they're in that leather garb.
All the crisscross straps and everything.
Yes, the horrible Judas Priest wannabe leather garb.
Yes. It's fantastic. It's so good. It's so good.
The outfits were definitely typical for that era for glam metal. So hard. They really did it on the wardrobe for that one for sure.
Oh, they did.
Yes.
But the funniest thing that I thought was the PTA only stayed for half a song. They didn't even stay for half the concert. It was half of one song. And, oh, no, this is fine. We're going to let our kids have fun.
Yeah, let's go to the bar. Let's have a drink. Yeah,
they didn't even wait for song 2.
They didn't.
And he gets up and he's like, I'm going to sing a song about my hometown. And they immediitely look, so is this as bad as you thought? I guess it's loud, but it's okay. Like, there are 2 words into the first song. So the other music for this film was composed by Christopher Young, who did music for Hellraiser and Nightmare on Elm Street 2.
Nice.
Love it.
And the thing about that is, like, I don't think about the other music in this movie. I think about those.
The other music wasn't very memorable, unfortunately.
No, it's not. It's not.
I think waiting for more from the story kind of made it so that the music kind of zoned out in the background a little bit while you're waiting for something more to develop, while you're waiting for certain things and like you're expecting something and then you're just like, oh, that's all they did? Okay. On with the story. They had a lot of basic elements, but no real development into each little thing. So, it kind of made it hard to really pay attention to the music.
Yeah. So I gave the music in this, I gave it a 4. The sound editing, just because it's so much fun, I love it. The sound editing, there were a couple moments that I noticed, like in the classroom, they sounded tinny and off. And at one point, at
where's the microphone? Where are they?
Yes.
Like, where are they positioned?
At one point, I actually thought I had blown my speakers, and I was worried that was what was causing it. But then I was like, no, it's not. It's just the movie quality. So that distracted me for a whole half a scene. But other than that, they actually do a nice job of what is going on. Sorry, I just clicked something.
How dare you click something?
I know, right?
Okay. They actually do a nice job of syncing the music with the performance on stage. So I actually, I'll mention that when we get to the directing or when we get to the acting. But for editing and special effects, we can talk about one of my favorite scenes in this film. And that
probably my favorite scene.
Totally. That you already mentioned. It combines music and the special effects.
Yes. But Vincent Pastore scene.
Yes, the Vincent Pastore scene where his son is playing, it's the Lizzie Borden song. He's playing the Lizzie Borden song and he comes in yelling at him about turn this music off. And the record like starts to bubble and it just looks alive, and then this cockroach-like tentacle being pops out of the speaker and sucks his father in, and it is great, cheesy puppet. Like,
oh, let me slowly back away. Let me slowly back away while you're. Oh no, I can't fight you off.
Big struggle.
Oh, I can't get you off me. No,
something the size of a hand.
You're a big guy. Come on,
Vincent Pastore.
Off of you.
Yes, Vincent Pastore being taken out by a hand. Basically, this is like. The practical effects in this movie, I appreciate for being practical effects, the puppetry work, some of that. It's not the best I've seen.
No, the pulsing speaker was like kind of cool though.
Yes.
You know, when he was being pulled in
through the speaker was amazing.
Yes. There are things, I think that is the peak for this film. Even the puppet at the end, I think is really cool, but it's clearly a puppet and they shot it well. They shot it well, but like I noticed on repeated watches, I was like, this girl goes from like being 5'5" to 3'5" with a 2-foot neck.
It's demon magic. Don't question it.
It's demon magic. That's how they work. It absorbed her. She now has ET legs, and they sucked up her legs, and she got shorter.
Well, the speaker scene was the best one out of all the effects scenes in the whole film to me. I saw that and I was like, oh my God, okay, there's the trauma influence that I'm looking for in a trauma film. And then from there, I was like, okay, great, I can't see what's next. But then it kind of fell short for me a little bit with some of those effects. I mean, like what you see with the kids in the crowd at the shows when they poof flash and they look kind of like strung out zombies, dehydrated, look kind of crazy.
Yeah.
You know, you never know what really happens to those kids. I mean, it was kind of fun, but it was very basic effect. Kind of reminds me of going to like a Guar show when you see stuff like that. You know, and then the girl, when she transforms after trying to get a little hot box on him and shit, you know, and she transforms into this thing. And he's like, oh my God, I didn't want this kid. You know,
that scene was funny to me because I'd have been fighting her as she's transforming. Like, let me run away. I'm not going to stand here and watch this.
When she pops up with her teeth hanging out and he just stands there.
Yeah.
But is she not? Did I see the wrong blonde girl in this movie, or is she not alive in the final scene when he goes to the concert and she's like behind Damien, like stroking his chest and whatever?
No, I think that was the bad girl.
Oh, is that the other girl?
I think that was the bad girl.
Okay.
Because the good girl's the one that turns into the puppet that shrunk and gets stabbed in the chest with a broken chair leg.
Okay.
Yeah, the other girl and the other kid, what was his name? Tommy or something?
Yeah, they lived.
Yeah, they live surprisingly, but it's like after all these transformations and everything, like you never know what happens to those kids after that. Like, are they still going to be transformed or something? Like, are they going to have flashes of it? Or are the kids okay now?
Well,
or like it affects the concert, you know? Because you see in the show, like in that ending scene when everyone turns into their monster forms when Damien has that stupid looking puppet suit thing going on, like a baby Godzilla.
Oh, come on,
He looks like Baby Godzilla.
The suit is beautiful.
Baby Godzilla with long forearms. That's exactly what I thought.
Kind of like a deformed like dinosaur from the show Dinosaurs.
Yeah.
You know, like not the mama, like some really twisted, messed up, like jacked up dinosaur from that thing.
Damien has 3 different forms in this film.
Yep.
His first one in the opening scene where he's doing a concert. And it took me a long time. Where do you think that concert was? The opening scene takes place at a concert. I think after my latest rewatch of trying to figure out where that scene takes place, they mentioned they've never done a concert before in the main story. I think what we're seeing at the very opening of the film is the New York.
For New York?
Yes.
Okay.
I think it's the end for New York.
Because the way you see all the makeup effects that you see in that first scene at the beginning, I was expecting to see more of that.
Yes.
I was actually very disappointed that he looked so completely different than the opening scene when they got to that final transformation scene. I was like...
That transformation from the beginning was awesome. That was actually pretty cool. And I thought that was a good look.
Well, and I was impressed with the puppetry on that one because that mask's lips are moving with the song.
Mm-hmm. They did really good.
It looked so good, and it sets a good standard. And then you get that baby Godzilla creature at the end, and he's like stationary on stage, just flailing his arms around. And
then there's the god awful suit that is a suit they bought at some kind of costume shop and modified.
I think that like climactic scene is my biggest qualm with the film. The teacher runs in, and apparently through all his Walt Whitman study, the solution is to dump gasoline and throw, why can't I think of what that's called? A flare on it.
Flare.
Yeah. That's the solution, and it doesn't do anything. The band survives and the kids run out. The only thing I noticed that it does is it wakes up the kids. All of a sudden they can see Damien for who he really is.
Yes. Though I thought their stampede out of the auditorium was the most ordered stampede I've ever seen.
Are you saying it was less than convincing?
You guys aren't really in a panic. Jeez.
This is not how actual teenagers run from demons and fire.
Yeah. There was no climbing over the seats and pushing people out of the way. It was a very ordered, but rushed retreat.
Yeah. The one guy who fell down the steps on fire, I believed him.
That was the bully.
Tony.
Yep.
That was the bully.
Yep. Tony. Yeah.
Well, that kind of addresses some of our script issues in this film. Before we jump into the next category, I want to tell you a little bit about Zencastr. When I was preparing for our 13 Nights of Halloween series, I was really searching for a way to streamline the process. I wanted a professional looking setup to invite our guests to. I wanted quality audio and video recording. And I wanted the easiest way to release the episodes to as broad of an audience as possible. This is how I landed on Zencastr. It is now super easy to record a podcast with Zencastr. Just log in using your browser and start recording a high quality podcast right away. Record studio quality sound and up to 4K video with your guests. Feel a sense of zen knowing Zencastr's multi-layered backups ensure you always have your recordings in the highest quality, even if the connection is unstable. And speaking of audio quality, have you ever worried what you sound like? Zencastr's post-production process makes you sound buttery smooth. It automatically removes those ums and ahs in your recording. It removes those awkward pauses in conversation too. Set the podcast loudness and levels while reducing background noise with the click of a button. So if you're thinking of starting your own podcast or just want to streamline what you are already doing, go to zencastr.com/pricing and use my code AVERAGECUSTOMER and you'll get 30% off your first month of any Zencastr paid plan. That's average customer, one word. I want you to have the same easy experiences I do for all of my podcasting and content needs. It's time to share your story. So let's dive into the next category. So the script is not bad, but it's also not good. Like we've talked about, the story for this is a ton of fun. It's pretty unique. It touches on a lot of like hot button issues from the time period and from that Satanic Panic. But the script kind of just glosses over all of that and is like, hey, we have a really cool idea. Let's just get a quick story out there. And that's how I felt with the script. There's a lot of things that I just kind of like, oh, somehow he figured out the fire is what will work.
After a night of studying witchcraft books in the library.
Yeah.
Which he fell asleep reading.
So they just happen to conveniently have in a small town library like that, where they're really religious and probably wouldn't have this stuff like normal anyway.
Yeah, that's exactly what an uber Christian town would have in their books on witchcraft.
They would be under. They'd be under.
This is
lock
what you
and
don't
key
want to do,
basement.
kids. This is the evil you don't want to get into.
Yeah.
And then. Go for it. I don't remember what I was going to say.
I thought that some of the script was very well written, but yeah, overall the story was a great idea. They needed a longer time. They should have had at least another half an hour to really kind of delve in and hit all of the hot button things they tried to push.
I would like to see more minor conflict and possible resolutions within certain small sets within like each of those kid characters, and then with the teacher and the mayor's daughter. You know, there could have been more development and story within all of those that could have made it a little more fuller, you know?
Yeah.
And that would have given a break in between the concerts a little bit so that it's not like all at once.
Well,
it's like, what are all these kids doing in all these different, betweens, you don't really see too much of that. It's just.
In some ways, this movie plays like an extended music video. And that's definitely how the script goes. Like you say, there's not a lot of development between. It is, hey, let's listen to Paradise, and then let's jump to this scene of the kid hitting his mom with the car, and then let's jump to another concert scene, and then let's go to this scene, and there's not a whole lot of exposition between it.
I love you, Dad. Pop.
Yep. And we, like you mentioned, we kind of see the setup at the beginning of these family dynamics for each of the kids.
Which none of them was exceptionally in a good family.
No.
They'll have one little thing or another.
Yes. And then there's no middle to it, but we see the end of it.
Yeah.
So it's like, hey, here's the family situation. These kids are going to listen to heavy metal music and be corrupted, and you as a parent are going to die. Like, that's the story.
Oh, the middle part we saw was, what was his name? Tommy, whatever.
Tommy, yeah.
Yeah, his dad going, "You're not going to another one of those concerts again, are you? I really don't think you should." And that was the whole of it.
Don't do what you, Dad. Yeah, I'm rebel.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know what I want to do in my life. I'm going to do it. I like a small town.
Yeah.
Bro, figure it out, guy. Figure it out. Just don't kill your dad. Just don't kill your dad.
But there was really no reason to kill Dad. We didn't see. I never saw his family dynamic as being that bad.
He wasn't really an antagonist. He was just kind of a bystander, just a side note of a character to him.
Now,
that's it.
Yep.
If the bully had done that to his dad, totally would have been like, "Yep, that's what should have happened." But he didn't. He killed his mom, though she deserved it too. She was annoying.
I'm almost thinking that might have made things a little bit more interesting to have the bully pop his dad, but have the good kid's dad be eaten by the record.
Yes.
It's like, where was the panic from Dad missing after that, before the next night, where mom gets hit with the car?
Oh, that's the thing. That's the thing that I loved, was that scene with like, he's dead and he's just sitting on the couch, like the car caught on fire. She's dead.
Oh, yeah.
And then in the next scene, like, her car didn't catch on fire. Her neck was cut. Like, oh, who told you about the fire?
Like, when did the fire happen?
Yeah, we didn't see any of that. So
No.
I
We
don't know
saw
how to
the
do
throat
that.
cut, but we didn't see the fire. I was like, okay, maybe she set the car on fire after she slit her throat.
That part was, I would say, was good for the effect, though. She really went at it with sawing at the neck before the blood started coming out. I was like, okay,
yes, I'm glad you pointed that out, because I
pretty decent on that one.
Yeah, I thought so too. I was like, man, she's digging in there with that knife. That was pretty, like, the one kind of gruesome kill.
It starts to come out.
Yeah, and then the blood comes out of the hand, but that's fine. No, that was the one pretty good kill in the film. So for the acting, it's pretty unremarkable. I wouldn't say anything was so bad I cringed. It was one of those that's like, it is clear this movie is not big budget. It's not top shelf material. It's what?
It's a B film.
Yeah,
it's a B film. No. Let's be honest. It's a C film.
It's a C film.
Okay. I can go with that.
Bruce Campbell does B films. Bruce Campbell is a god.
Bruce Campbell is a lovely, fantastic person.
He is. But I thought they did a passable job. I will say I enjoy the performance from Damien, the actor who plays Damien.
Sal Viviano.
Yes,
yeah, he was really good.
He hams it up on stage. He looks like he is having the best time. And he pretty convincingly fakes singing in a lot of those scenes. And I think that was one of the smart things for the director to do, was focus on the faces instead of like, hey, the drummer is not matching up with the music right now. Instead, they're matching up with him.
And the guitar strumming is completely wrong. I've seen it in actual music videos where it's like, that's not the way that... Okay, fine, whatever.
Yes. So I think they played it smart by not doing that. But also, if they hadn't have had somebody who was as entertaining as he was as Damien, the scenes would have been a total waste. I think he's kind of got that pretty boy glam metal look down, and it worked. It worked for the film.
Never mind the multiple hairstyles that he ended up having.
I know, right?
They're all wigs. So I figured that
metal
out.
Hair. And then he's got the nice trim hair when he's talking to the teacher.
Yep.
Then he goes to the metal hair, and then he's actually bald, which was that part was cool.
He has to be bald before he can transform into the baby Godzilla.
The makeup transition and all that stuff, though.
The bladder effects on his face.
Yeah. But the big hair to the I'm a clean cut I can't think of the guy who played RoboCop right. Peter Geller.
Oh, he basically looked like a youth pastor with his clean cut look. He was like a 1990s youth pastor.
Yeah, with the loose shirt tucked in, with the slacks and everything. One fun fact about him, though. One fun fact about Sal Viviano: he graduated from Schaumburg High School down the road from where we went to art school. Dude.
Shut up! No way.
Yeah.
And as I recall, he's actually a singer.
Is he?
He's got some.
Yeah, he works in commercials and theater.
Yeah.
So I wonder if
that was in Broadway debut in The Three Musketeers in 1984.
I wonder if that was actually him singing in the film, because I didn't think it was.
I don't know if it was him for all of it, but that would have given him the lip sync.
Yes, that would have been.
He's not credited for any of the music for the original music played by Black Roses.
Okay. No. Yeah, because I know there's the one time he lip syncs the Lizzie Borden song, and that's clearly not him.
No, yeah.
But yeah, clearly. That would explain why he convincingly sings to the camera. Why
and has the showmanship of doing all of that, because he's got the stage presence.
That checks out. He's
got the experience.
The only other person, I think these kid characters, the good boy, is it Johnny?
Tommy.
Okay. Tommy is clearly 30 years old. I don't buy that this kid is in high school.
He's not a teenager in high school, bro. Not even close.
And I know they did that a lot in those movies, and some of them are painfully obvious, and he was painfully obvious from the opening scene. But he does a good job. Nobody was painfully acting in any of it. The teacher went on to star in soap operas after this. He was
a small-time player, and then the mayor, Ken Swofford, he was also a small-time actor back in like 70s and 60s.
Yeah.
Yeah. I thought a lot of the acting was very stiff, but that could also be part of the director telling them how to act and part of the script just falling apart and making illogical jumps.
Stiff actors working with a stiff script.
And so it becomes stiff and erratic, because then there's the random outbursts that just like, wow, there was not even a buildup. And it wasn't just the kids that did it, because you expect it kind of out of high schoolers, but it was some of the adults too. Like the PTA people were like cool and calm, and then overly angry, upset, and then back to cool and calm. It was like, Wow.
Yeah.
I don't know if that works.
Some of those scenes, as weird as it is, it's not near the quality at all, but it reminds me of the scenes in Jaws when the town gathers and they're all getting mad at Flint and stuff. Like those always, it's what I think of, even though they're not even closely related and one is clearly better done than the other. But yeah. So we can talk about the direction, like you mentioned, that might be why some of the acting comes through the way that it does. But the positives for me on the direction, we mentioned how this takes place in a small town. And I love the kind of focus. Like I mentioned, he almost treated the town as the character less than some of the characters. So I love that focus of those small town hall meetings. The opening shots after the concert prequel sequel ending, the epilogue that acts as a prologue, the after that, and they just cut to this empty main street and the Ferrari or Lamborghinis drive up and the band gets out of them. Opulence is a sin. That's the
those are sexy cars though, I'm not gonna lie.
It's a cool opening effect of showing, that small town, empty streets, these people roll in and already taking it over. But I like that. And like I said, I actually like that it feels like a long music video. So while I would like some of that exposition between, the music scenes didn't drag on to the point for me that I'm like, okay, can we get back to the story? I was like, I'm having fun with it. It's all right. I don't mind.
They failed as a rock opera.
I would agree with that. I would agree with that. But it's an entertaining, to me, it's almost less of a rock opera. And now looking back at it in 2024, it's a snapshot of that paranoia from 1988. And while it's not Iron Maiden on stage, it's interesting to watch that, like, they made this because somebody out there thinks this is what's happening. That those bands are up there singing a song and the people in the crowd are being possessed and turning into zombies.
Well, I mean,
at least not the way you think.
Yeah, but you mentioned Iron Maiden, and it brings to mind actually Black Sabbath more, because Ozzy was known for doing random, wild, and seemingly satanic things like biting the heads off of bats. That was the thing.
Well, he had a song called Mr. Crowley. I mean, kind of says a lot right there in itself.
That's true. But for me, the direction, I mean, yes, you've made good points, but I think the director of the movie really needed to go spend like a couple of weeks at a mall in the food court and just watch people and how they interact.
I could agree with that. Okay, yeah.
Because I think that would have made the limited interactions we could see more authentic and give it that little bit of extra depth that we were missing. And you could have still kept it 84 minutes or whatever.
Yeah. Yep. It does have that kind of weird, like people don't act normally with each other aspect of it. Like this is not a normal interaction.
And it seems like the cast didn't even get time to spend off camera or didn't get a chance to do any kind of bonding between themselves at all to give cohesion to, like, the kids didn't hang out together.
Yeah, you see like Tommy and what's her name, the teacher's pet girl who's in love with the teacher. Yeah, the love kid with the teacher.
It
like
goes
they
nowhere.
have like a weird, like even them hanging out seems very stiff and like there's no kind of natural flow to it.
You get the impression that it's the first. Yeah, but you get the impression it's the first time they've done this.
Yeah, and it
even though he seems to have interest in her.
Yeah,
and they've been going to school for years together.
I would definitely agree with that observation. It doesn't feel like a city with a history prior to what we're seeing. It's like we're jumping in. This town exists for this film. The end.
Yeah, this town disappears after this film is over.
Yes,
small New England town in the middle of nowhere, and poof,
it was there for a week and then gone. Yeah, no, that is an interesting point. I didn't think about Well, and you also mentioned when you were talking about the character development that they seem really two-dimensional, and I think that plays into all of this, and that feeds that feeling of there's no depth to them. You have your almost cliche characters in every scenario, and they exist as a cliche, not as a character. Like there's a reason I can't remember their names.
Yeah, because they could be anything.
Yes, Johnny, Tommy, Dave,
Billy,
Mike,
Sally, Sarah,
they're
Susan.
all there.
Buffy.
I'm sure we named at least 3 of the characters from the film. So
Probably.
that makes perfect sense. Ultimately, there's no really flair from director John Fasano. I couldn't tell you like anything else he's done. He did do another rock adjacent horror film, but there's no like there are some cool shots. I do like a couple of the shots of Damien on stage and what they did with the lighting, and some of those look pretty cool, but again, it's music video cool, not anything crazy.
One thing that ground my gears through the whole thing was the shakiness of the camera throughout the film.
Really?
Did you notice that?
I did not, actually.
There were shakes to the scenes throughout the entire film. Drove me nuts.
Yeah.
Little shudder. Scenes in the classroom, looking out on town. All places there's this little shake. You know,
like somebody's holding it and they've got the tremors because they're on caffeine withdrawal or something.
No Steadicam in use then.
No, they should have had it on a tripod and just let the tripod do the work.
Yeah. So then let's wrap it up by heading into the cultural significance. We've kind of touched on it as we've talked about that whole. I think the cultural significance of this film is more the whole cultural significance of Satanic Panic. And that wraps up the music, movies. There was a lot going on that people were paranoid about. So I actually learned, because I was real young, I got the end of it, and I had parents who were influenced by hearing all of these things. I watched the documentaries Paradise Lost, where 3 boys are arrested for murder because they were Satanists, according to the small town that they lived in. And this happened in the early 90s. So that's where I learned most of my Satanic Panic knowledge. But I just think it's an interesting this movie acts as a little time capsule of that fear of. This movie references Elvis, and you watch the new Elvis movie from Baz Luhrmann, and that one was definitely more of a sexual nature. Like the way he moves his hips is going to corrupt everybody.
Oh, my Lord Jesus.
Yep. Yeah, well, and he does have
You're
the song.
enticing the youngins. You got to stop.
Yeah. Doesn't he have that song, I Am Evil, or something like that?
I don't think so.
I can't remember.
I don't think that was, I don't know. I was never much of an Elvis fan, but watching
Me neither.
Nope.
the clips of him in the videos, the music videos, and in movies when he was doing it, I can totally see why they would say, yeah, that's too sexual for stage, and you can't do that here.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Well, if you want a movie that's like a music video, let me tell you, Guar, Phallus in Wonderland. All the effects, all the crazy, all the stage setups, all the metal, all the awesome rocking music, crazy scenes, insanity, messed up stuff that you definitely not for the children, NSFW. Craziness ensues, but there's a story, crazy plot, good characters, just insanity. So I definitely recommend, if you want to see something that's more like that, go for some Guar. They've got multiple movies. Even though they're a band, they have multiple movies, and their stuff's insane, but hilarity in lots of it. And with the way things were when they were coming up in the late 80s through the 90s, their films are just madhouse, dude. Oh my God.
Did you watch their documentary? Shudder has a Gwar documentary that's really fascinating. I watched that.
I'm gonna check that out, dude.
Yeah, it is really.
I love some Gwar.
Yeah, it's a really fascinating documentary. I never got into their music until I watched the documentary, and then I was like, okay, now I kind of have an understanding of what's going on as much as there can be one, and I'm curious.
Well, ever since I saw them, like saw Gwar and like Beavis and Butthead, and especially in the movie Empire Records, one of my top favorite films of all time, that's when I really got into Gwar. I was like, man, this stuff is pretty crazy. It's definitely growing up in the Bible Belt in Southeast Arkansas. Like, you weren't supposed to watch that kind of stuff. Yep. But it was just so visual and just so right there in your face. It's hard to ignore. It draws you in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You look like you're thinking there.
processing.
I'm always thinking. There's a lot of metal that I didn't get a chance to listen to. I didn't get into metal until later in life, but I grew up on the 70s classics, the 60s and 70s classics, like The Doors and The Who, and a bit of Zeppelin, a bit of Skinner. Being in my household meant that, well, I couldn't listen to that kind of stuff when Mom was home.
You snuck it.
The music up. I had to be sneaky.
My stepdad was the staunch one. My mom had all that. My mom grew up listening to that stuff with my mom. But when she got remarried, man, stepdad, that dude was such religious zealot. Oh my God.
I had to memorize
any of that anymore.
Oh yeah, no, but I had memorized Slippery When Wet. I knew the entire album forwards and backwards. I listened to Wham on vinyl and Boston's Third Stage on vinyl. Had all of that stuff memorized too, but all when Mom wasn't home. As soon as Mom got home, I had to go back to being, good.
I always think it's interesting hearing these stories about how people grew up. Because I found out much later in life that a lot of my interests actually came from my mother when I thought they were my father. And then finding out, like, maybe not musical taste, but like, growing up was only allowed to listen to Christian radio. That was it. And then after most of us leave the house, Mom is the one who's listening to like the oldies station, the 70s station, the 80s station. Yeah. Dad is the one who's still got the worship music going in his car. And I'm like, oh, I'm learning a little bit here about the dynamic of my parents that I was too young to catch at the time. Yeah. Yep. But like, I remember the other day, just this year, my wife was giving me a hard time for listening to Journey a lot, like at the end of summer. I love Journey. I'm a Steve Perry. I love Journey. But I was listening to that and my mom was like, she heard my wife say that or something. And my mom was like, yeah, Journey is good. And I'm like, Dad would never admit that Journey is good. So it's just those interesting dynamics growing up of figuring who was the most influential. And
oh no, rock music was something I found all on my own. My dad listened to country music. So if it was 60s, 70s, into the 80s country music, that was Dad's preference. So I love that country. I think Shania Twain killed country. Shania Twain came out, killed country because she was like, we're going to go cross lines and stuff and not make country music anymore.
Yeah.
When I was like my early teens, my mom, that's when she went off and started getting real staunch about what I listened to with music. It used to be before she listened to all this different stuff, with such a wide variety. And once I started listening to stuff like Korn or Insane Clown Posse, she's like, no, you cannot have that. Like, you should not be listening to this. And I was just like, nope, want it even more now, Mama.
Drawing a line.
Too late.
Yep. You had all the stuff you were restricted from when you were my age, and now you're trying to do it to me because Grandpa was on the farm and you were a farm girl and you couldn't have that out on the farm. But it's a new world, Mom. Let's do it anyway.
Yeah.
Well, I think that conversation alone kind of attests to the cultural significance of what this movie is doing, talking about those generational lines and just the perception of music in general and how it can influence people. I haven't seen another movie that kind of addresses that topic. I know Jonathan and I have a movie coming up that kind of addresses video games in a similar way. And just that kind of entertainment in general
is... Well, I can say something now, and you guys can talk about it more later if you like, but I do have a BS degree. I have a degree to do BSing. Psychology based.
Okay.
And there was a study done, an actual study done about the effect of violent movies, music, and video games on the youth of America.
Mm-hmm.
And the result of that study is that children who are already in violent homes in lower income families have violence around them constantly are more likely to become violent listening to violent violent music, watching violent movies, and playing violent video games. The rest of us, it doesn't really affect us at all.
Interesting.
Okay, so environment plus the tones that associate with it. Okay.
It is
because I was going to bring up, there was a study in, I think, out of Queensland, Australia, at a university out there, about the beneficial effects of listening to metal music and how it is therapeutic for a lot of people, because it in a lot of ways helps people decompress and get rid of some of that stress and help find a positive outlet to let go of these emotions of frustration.
It's a beautiful way to release anger.
Affect you in your environment, you know?
Yeah. It's a beautiful way to release anger.
I think that is interesting studies, because you grow up hearing that it's going to corrupt you, but it's really the product of how you're growing up and what is being put into you, what is influencing you, kind of combining those two things. Because, you know, I mentioned how I grew up, but metal was my outlet. That is my therapy. I'm having a rough day. I go straight to a certain album and I play it as loud as I can. And by the end of that album, I'm better. I'm decompressed. It is out of my system. So I think that is interesting.
A lot of people use video games the same way. I personally will pick a game that I can cheat at, like Doom. Let me become a god, and I'm so angry. Let me chainsaw or punch through all of the enemies.
Rage demolish.
Yep.
Yeah. And it's great, and it's cathartic, and I can do it until I'm not angry anymore.
Yeah.
Which is much better than taking it out on people.
Yep. And I think that is, like we mentioned, the environment. You don't have, like, you realize that is how you're processing, instead of wanting to take that out on somebody else and realizing that, like, hey, this is how I should handle my issues. No, this is going to the video game and letting it be the release.
And it's funny because being a psychology student, I got to take a really good look at my past and see how close I could have come, or how close I did come to stepping over that line and being a serial killer. Mm-hmm. It's a very fine line, finer for some than others.
Oh, no doubt.
Yeah.
So yeah,
I listen to my true crime all the time and hear those stories. So ultimately, out of 10, what would your entertainment be on this film?
Okay, doing the whole thing. I don't think I did. I said a 3.
A 3?
Yeah, I said a 3.
Both of you were 3s.
I scored really, really low on character and script and the acting and the direction. I was just
are we talking 3 overall out of 10?
Yes.
Or like 3 out of 5?
Okay.
No, 3 out of 10. 3 out of 10. The highest score
out of 10?
Yeah.
Out of 10, I'd give it like 6.
Okay.
Editing was my highest score at 4. I was really underwhelmed with this movie, and it was sad because there was so much potential. There was so much good that could have been done.
I was expecting more trauma style effects.
Yeah.
I wanted to see more of that.
A little bit more of that trauma influence. So I actually, and this is probably a product of my environment. I scored it a 9. I just have a ton of fun with this movie. I couldn't put it on anything. I didn't score anything. My highest scores were for It Factor and music. No, I gave that special effects a 4 because I'm softer for practical effects. I'll score a little bit more lenient. But everything else was a 3. It's just good. It's not great. It's not bad. It's just middle of the road. But this is
mid.
Yes. But this is a movie that entertains me. It's a short runtime. I think it would be a more profound movie if that was expanded on. But because of its short runtime, it's almost like put it on when I'm cleaning or something. And it's just a good background movie. Like I said, I put it on to fall asleep to because it's not something that's going to traumatize me waking up in the middle of the night and seeing somebody being dismembered or something. You know, it's just an inoffensive movie that kind of acts as a snapshot of small town 1988, kind of that panic of metal music.
Yeah.
If it wasn't for the small bits of nudity scenes, I'd probably give it a 5 instead. To be honest.
Well, and there's that one scene that I do not understand why it even happens in that movie. Like before she goes to seduce her teacher, she stands in front of the mirror
and just feeling herself up. Like,
just feels herself up for a minute.
Oh no, you got the one chick from the band who shows up in Tommy's room, and then like they get it on, and then he gets up to get out of bed, and then like as he passes by, whoosh, she's gone.
Yeah, I thought that was a whole dream sequence, to be honest.
I thought it was just more of the band getting to the kids.
That makes sense.
Yeah, it was more of the band getting to the kids.
I think
she was actually there.
Okay, I took it as him like going back and fantasizing about the chick from the band.
I don't know.
So either way, it wasn't very clearly explained. No. But yeah, like I said, it might be a product of being a little bit sheltered growing up, but I had a ton of fun with this movie. I do want to compare it, like we mentioned at the beginning, I do want to compare it to Trick or Treat. Yeah. Because that one actually has, I think, music from Ozzy in it.
I'm going to have to go back and watch that because I don't think I've seen it.
Yeah.
I haven't seen it, but I need to go back and watch it.
And I just want to see how they handle the similar subject matter.
I think this is a great movie to watch with friends and have popcorn and be stupid with.
And
play drinking
time,
games with it.
Yes, play drinking games with it. Yes, I was thinking that same thing.
You know, something. You know, this isn't a solo watch movie because otherwise it's really boring and all of the bad things kind of stand out. This is a watch with your friends and be goofy kind of movie.
Yeah, that makes total sense. Know your friend group.
Yep.
Yeah, you can totally Djibouti dub this movie or like MST3K it.
Yes. I love MST3K. 3K. Yeah, it's good stuff.
I would agree with that. Like my wife wouldn't sit through this movie, even though I can tell her that like I find this movie incredibly entertaining and I'm having a great time. She would be like, I don't want to watch this at all. So yeah.
Oh.
All right. Is that what we have to say for this?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
we hit
thank
the
you
interesting trivia bits too, so all good.
Yeah. I think we covered it pretty well. So I will go ahead and lead us out of here. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Glad to be here.
Yeah. All right. We had the pleasure of hosting Wyrd and Jonathan, whose expertise and enthusiasm illuminated these films' themes, the production, and any kind of cultural impact the film might have had. From its soundtrack to its supernatural storyline, Black Roses is a drinking movie with friends. It has a little bit of heavy, well, they call it heavy metal. It's just some rock music. And I did think it had a lack of horror elements, even though it plays with it a little bit. But thank you both for joining me. And stay tuned for more episodes. Jonathan and I will be back in a couple weeks. I'm not going to announce the movie yet, just in case things happen. But we will be back with another film. And Wyrd, thank you yet again.